It's hard to believe, but I've already had this Cybtruck for 5 months. I had good intentions to make a lot of YouTube content with it, which hasn't materialized yet, but we're gonna get into some of that today. There's a lot of dedicated YouTube channels where you can find reviews on this vehicle, driving characteristics. So I'm not gonna go into that. We're gonna dig into the details of the suspension here today and what makes it so unique and one of the best features of this vehicle. But top line, I've been extremely happy with this. Again, 5 months, nearly 9,000 miles on it. I've had 0 issues with it. Incredible vehicle. Let's dig into the suspension. Truck suspensions are particularly difficult to balance ride quality and payload towing. And the reason for that, in the rear of the vehicle where most of the payload goes, in the example of the Cybtruck, is 2,500 pounds, which puts it solidly above pretty much any half-ton truck available. So it's a little bit more between a half-ton and a 3/4 ton truck. Most of these trucks in the category have a solid rear axle in the rear of the vehicle because the ride height changes significantly when it's unloaded versus you've got a trailer on it or the bed full of a payload. It'll compress the suspension, and in independent suspensions, as I detailed in a previous video, I'll link to that in the video description, I explain why an independent suspension in the rear of a truck is normally not a good idea because the angle of the tire changes as we articulate that suspension. Now, as I detailed in that previous video, the Ford Lightning went with a very unique suspension with a swing arm in the rear to where that tire travels up and down perfectly vertical and does not change the tilt of that rear wheel when it's loaded or unloaded. So the folks at Tesla did something a little bit different with the Cybtruck. They went with an air suspension. That allows you to vary the pressure in that rear air spring to maintain the same ride height if you're loaded or unloaded or any combination of the two. So that gives you proper tire alignment no matter what the conditions are. But it got me to thinking, you can change the ride height on purpose on this vehicle from entry mode, what it's at now, to a low ride height, medium ride height, high ride height, and then extraction mode off-road. So if we ride around in high or ride around in low, is that going to throw our tire alignment off? We're going to dig into that. And why didn't Tesla go with a swing arm like the Lightning did, where that tire travels completely vertical while giving you the benefits of an independent suspension? Let's dig in. So what I'm going to do is go to every ride height, measure the ride height, and then I'm going to take a level of the rear wheel to see if it's changing as the suspension articulates up and down. I had to pull into the garage here to find a level spot. But after removing the wheel cover, there's a fair amount of brake dust and it's really dirty. So to save my hands from getting incredibly dirty, I'm gonna use this super clean wheel cleaner. It works extremely good. You don't have to do a lot of scrubbing. It just dissolves that stuff and we'll rinse it off. And so we've got a nice clean wheel. Entry mode, 37¼ inches tall. We'll check the sidewall of the tire. For level here, we can see the top of the tire is tipped in, so I have to pull the top of the level away to level out the tire. That's what I'd expect for a low ride height. It kicks the top of the tire in towards the vehicle. We can change the ride height inside the vehicle on the touchscreen, but we can also do it on the app of the phone. So we're gonna go to low ride height now. Didn't take much. We went up about 1/2 inch, 37¾ inch at low ride height. Checking our sidewall again. The top of our tire is still kicked in at low ride height. You can see I gotta pull the top of the level away to get us to a condition that's vertical. Medium. That seems like a bigger jump than entry to low. And we are now up to 39.25 inches. So 1.5 inches. That was a bigger jump. Let's see if our tire's level now. Okay, moment of truth here. This is where I would guess Tesla aligned this and made medium ride height the level setting for the tire. But it still seems to be a little off. Let's check the rim. Just a little bit tipped in yet. So I'm getting the same result if I'm on the wheel or if I'm on the tire. Still a little bit tipped in at the top. Now we're at high, 41.25 inches at high ride height. So another big jump. We can tell the distance up here above the wheel or above the tire has increased significantly. Let's check our vertical. The top of the tire is still tipped in just a little bit. And I have to say, it looks like there is not much change in any of these ride heights. Now this is the highest on-road mode, but we can enable off-road mode and go even higher. So on our screen, we go into our settings menu. We can go into dynamics, and we've got our drive mode, which normally I keep it in comfort. The ride and handling is relaxed, but there's a sport mode that stiffens things up and lowers it down, but you can make it custom, change the ride height you go at, and the sensitivity of the throttle, acceleration, all that good thing, and preferred ride height. But let's go to off-road, confirm that we are indeed going off-road. We'll launch the app, and we can go to ride height. So we've got 2 more settings. Let's go very high. See where we're at there. So there's an air compressor and solenoid air valves that control the whole system. There we can hear the air compressor. It's pretty quiet, and in normal situations doesn't run very much. But we can see that's quite a difference going into very high mode. So very high, 43.25. That's a pretty big difference. Let's see if the vertical of the rear tire has changed. It has not. The top is still kicked in a little bit, and I would say no measurable difference from before. We are now maxed out in extract mode. And we are up just shy of 45.25 from the floor to the bottom of the fender. Let's see if there's been any change into how vertical the rear tire is. We've got the same result, we're just tipped in slightly. This is pretty interesting results. So we've got consistent vertical on the rear tire as the suspension articulates from its lowest setting to its highest across a pretty big range of motion. How did Tesla do it? Let's take this rear tire off and take a look at the suspension. So what are we looking at here suspension wise? We've got our air spring that controls the preload or the spring rate of our entire system here. Key component of it, but what's allowing the travel of the rear wheel? We've got our lower A-arm and our upper A-arm. And I was wrong. I thought we'd have articulation changing how vertical the rear tire is, but Tesla has gone above and beyond here and made the top A-arm and the bottom A-arm the same length. So when this thing goes through its full range of motion, the tire is allowed to stay completely vertical or at whatever alignment is chosen, slightly tipped in at the top for better handling, throughout its whole range of motion, which is pretty awesome. One wrinkle I didn't talk about, and the reason I believe Tesla did not go with the swing arm style that the Ford Lightning did, is this linkage right here, which is controlled to the steering mechanism to allow four-wheel steering on this vehicle. So to enable the four-wheel steering, obviously we need to be able to articulate at this joint, which the double wishbone system does give you ball joints top and bottom to allow that pivot of the wheel assembly. We can catch a glimpse of the rear motor and gearbox in there. We can also see a look at the giga casting or the aluminum casting that's providing the structure of the rear. It is incredibly good packaging and design that has enabled them to make the lower A-arm and the upper A-arm the same length to give us that vertical articulation, or the vertical of the rear wheel not changing throughout its range of motion or its suspension travel. That is not typical. Typically, the top A-arm is much smaller due to packaging. And so you've got change in that during articulation of the rear suspension. So this is a very nice setup. On a side note, take a look at the bottom of this vehicle. It is incredibly clean. I mean, just very impressive. Now I just want to pull a tape and verify that the top and bottom arms are the same length. So we're going to go from the pivot point to the knuckle here. I'm going to call it 20 inches. A little bit more difficult to get a good number on the bottom one, but let's see if we can do it. Yeah, it looks like 20 inches right on the money. So they indeed are using equal length. I'm actually pretty genuinely impressed with the Cybtruck here. I was not expecting equal length arms and to keep the same alignment across the whole range of motion for the suspension. Now I can drive around like an idiot in extract mode and not worry about tire wear. Let's take a look at the front suspension. We've got the lower A-arm here where you would expect it, and then the top A-arm is way up there, connected with this knuckle assembly, this cast aluminum. So the bottom one here is cast aluminum also, and then we've got a steel A-arm way up top. Let's take a measurement of these and see if they are equal length. Very interesting setup up front. Our knuckle comes way above the tire. So our ball joint is actually out in the tire, and this is a packaging piece that I'm talking about. Making these top and lower arms is not the easy thing to do. Let's get a measurement here from pivot to ball joint. We've got about 12 inches. Let's measure the bottom to see if we're equal length. So in the front of the Cybtruck, we do have a difference. The lower arm is 14 inches from pivot to ball joint. The upper arm is about 12 inches from pivot to ball joint. These aren't precise, I'm just pulling a tape on it. But the front of the vehicle isn't as critical as the rear. Like I said about payload, towing, we're gonna have variability in the rear, and it's for stability's sake on the rear of the vehicle to stay planted well. We don't want that wheel or tire tipping in relation to the ground. So They prioritized that, and you can see what I'm talking about, packaging up front to make the frunk. And I'm sure there's other components in there. They weren't able to push that upper control arm pivot point in towards the center of the vehicle. But I'm still impressed that they got it as close as they did. You can tell they really tried with that steering knuckle, get it up over the tire to move that pivot point out to make them as close as possible. Let's change the ride height on the front, see what a range of motion is, and see if we can tell a noticeable difference in how vertical that tire is. At the high ride height, we are 40 1/4. Let's see how level we are. And we are pretty much vertical. Now we're at the low on-road, so I'm doing the extreme of the on-road settings. We were just at high. Let's go to low. We are at 36 3/4. And we changed a little bit just as expected because the geometry of the suspension. So what happened here is the top of the tire kicked in a little bit as we went down. So there's a little bit of variation. Pretty interesting results on our Cybtruck here. I was not expecting equal length A-arms on either front or rear. But it just kind of reinforces the reason people love Tesla vehicles is not just because they're electric vehicles, but because they go above and beyond in their design and engineering to make them really good vehicles. So they don't disregard or cheap out on the suspension just because it can drive itself and it's incredibly fast and give you a piece of junk otherwise. It's all around a very good vehicle, albeit a very unique looking one. But I was a little bit concerned driving around in ride height, high ride height or low ride height, because I didn't want to mess up the tire wear on the vehicle. But now this investigation has assuaged that fear, and you can really use all the different drive modes and not worry about that. Of course, the front is going to change a little bit, but not very noticeable. They got pretty close on those two suspension arms on the length of that. So overall, I'm quite impressed. Hey, if you found this interesting, leave in the comments below some other details you'd like to check in with the Cybtruck. I'm gonna tow and haul with it. I haven't gotten to that yet. We went on a road trip from central Wisconsin all the way down to the panhandle of Florida this summer for a beach vacation. Went flawless. I subscribed to full self-driving, hardly touched the steering wheel or the pedals the whole way down there. Makes that so much easier and less exhausting letting the vehicle drive itself. Thanks for watching. Adios.